In 2020, the Green Bay Packers front office made one of the strangest decisions an organization has ever made.
I couldn't think of a more miserable mentor than Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers had just thrown for 26 touchdowns and only 4 interceptions while recording over 4,000 passing yards in the 2019 season. Green Bay responded by spending their first-round draft pick on a quarterback in one of the most outrageous draft day decisions in history.
I'm done with the Packers. I'm done. I don't want to watch this no more. Why would you do that?
He should feel disgusted. He should feel insulted. And as far as I'm concerned, if I was Aaron Rodgers, I'd ask to be traded. To hell with all of them. Kick rocks. Have a nice life. I'll move on without you. That's how I feel Aaron Rodgers should feel at this particular moment in time.
It was considered remarkably strange at the time, opting to select Aaron Rodgers' future replacement rather than additional talent to support their future Hall of Famer in his bid to win another Super Bowl, and needless to say, fans were pissed. Now, in 2023, with several years of perspective and a lot more information at our disposal, how has the Jordan Love experiment panned out? Has it worked? Have the Green Bay Packers landed another elite quarterback after going over 30 years and knowing nothing but Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre? If so, at what cost to the Packers? Let's rewind to the 2020 NFL Draft. Green Bay had just made it to the NFC Championship game, losing to the San Francisco 49ers in a 37-20 matchup, one game short of the Super Bowl. With a future Hall of Fame quarterback and a team capable of making it to the NFC title game, one would imagine that you take all of your capital and invest it into players for the following season to make another run at the Super Bowl. I don't know, get an offensive lineman to protect Aaron Rodgers, or hell, even get a wide receiver opposite of Devontae Adams. The answer though, we all know what happened. They got neither. The Green Bay Packers drafted Jordan Love out of Utah State. He was a peculiar prospect too, and by no means considered a home run. During the pre-draft process, Jordan Love's name fell out of the QB1 conversation, and Joe Burrow, Tua Tagovailoa, and Justin Herbert were all drafted in the top 6. The Packers were waiting at pick 30, having been one of the league's best teams that year, but they decided to trade up into the 26th pick with the Miami Dolphins. The best part though is that everyone and their mom started speculating that perhaps the Packers would draft T. Higgins out of Clemson, or maybe even Michael Pittman out of USC. But instead, they passed on all of that talent and selected their future quarterback instead. And after the selection was made, it was a media frenzy around this team, as they should have been constructing a roster to win now.
And the fact that they don't take a receiver is ridiculous. I mean, it is inexcusable. It makes the Jordan Love pick look even worse. They essentially closed their own window.
But when the dust settled, Rodgers made it his mission to make his own team aware he wasn't in the business of slowing down, and went on a revenge tour. He won MVP that year, throwing for a career-high 48 passing touchdowns and only 5 interceptions. He nearly doubled his season total from the year before, and did it without the weapon he would have liked in that draft. Rodgers' MVP performance forced the hand of the organization. I mean, you can't just move on from a guy who just won the MVP with one of the best quarterbacking seasons we've ever seen in the history of the league. So Rodgers stayed the starter, and the team would continue to develop Jordan Love in the background. The situation they now found themselves in was eerily similar to that of Aaron Rodgers when he was drafted to replace Brett Favre. Rodgers was drafted with the 24th overall pick in the first round of the 2005 draft. Like Jordan Love, he had been overlooked and skidded through the first round, despite their Hall of Fame quarterback remaining the starter at the time. Favre had helped the Packers to a Super Bowl in the 1990s, winning 3 straight league MVPs between 1995 and 1997. However, when Aaron Rodgers was drafted, they hadn't been close to winning another the season before. Brett Favre himself even came out and noted that the Jordan Love-Aaron Rodgers situation was completely different than him and A-Rod. He said, "They were several plays away from winning the Super Bowl this year. When we drafted Aaron, that wasn't the case." Fast forward to 2007, Favre announced his retirement, and it was only then that Aaron Rodgers took over, and it worked out pretty well for them ever since. Rodgers' MVP season in 2020 might have been truly outstanding, and many believed it was enough for him to walk away from the game while while still on top. He didn't, instead returning again in 2021 and winning the NFL MVP again. Was it the plan to sit Jordan Love for 3 seasons? Probably not. Rodgers had sat for 2 before he got his shot, but that seemed like it was planned. And it was also executed by a completely different front office staff to the one that drafted Love. Planned or unplanned, Green Bay now had their potential future of the franchise sitting and learning from the league MVP for multiple years. It took 3 full years before we got to see Jordan Love get a shot at the starting job in Green Bay. Because after the 2022 season, Aaron Rodgers' next move was the biggest move of that offseason.
Aaron Rodgers officially is being traded to the New York Jets in a trade involving 6 picks.
And finally, in his 4th year, Jordan Love would be the starter. By this point, the guys he'd been drafted with in the same first round had already signed huge extensions. Burrow had just been to the Super Bowl, Herbert had gotten paid, and Tua Tagovailoa had just started to turn things around under Mike McDaniel. Jordan Love, on the other hand, had 1 start to his name, but the Packers had to show their commitment to him with a quickly expiring contract. Should he come out and look like the next Aaron Rodgers, the Packers would then find themselves in a potential bidding war with the rest of the league for their quarterback. Instead, they opted to give him an extension that would keep him under contract through the 2024 season, buying time for the team and a nice money extension for a quarterback who hasn't yet been able to prove himself. The move also showed a level of commitment from Green Bay to the Jordan Love project. They gave him $13 million guaranteed with the potential to earn up to $22 million in what would be the prequel to a mega deal if the Packers would go on a run in the 2023 season. And honestly, things started pretty well for Love too. He threw 6 touchdowns in his first 2 games, giving the Packers faithful plenty to be optimistic about in the first year since 1991, without either Brett Favre or Aaron Rodgers throwing the football. There are literally 30-year-old fans who have never supported anybody but a Hall of Fame quarterback. That pressure is immense, and it's not going to be perfect right away. But don't get me wrong, after the strong start, Jordan Love did hit a bit of a wall. I mean, he threw 6 picks in his next 3 games, including a nightmare performance against the Detroit Lions in Week 5. Love threw 3 interceptions in that game, and it was never competitive as a result. Naturally, the critics flooded in, labeling Love as a bust and the experiment a failure. Slowly though, the mistakes began to filter out, and both Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love's connection with one another was evidently growing stronger. Trusting one another on game days can only be practiced on game days, and now later in the year, things appear to be taking a drastic turn in the right direction. Green Bay is now flying towards a wildcard spot in the playoffs, and Jordan Love has boasted excellent performances against both the Detroit Lions and the Los Angeles Chargers. Love went for 322 passing yards and 2 touchdowns against the Chargers in Week 11, but his biggest statement came on Thanksgiving. Jordan Love went out and picked them apart. I mean, at the beginning of this game, he made an early statement and threw deep to Christian Watson to open up the game. And then he proceeded to put up 22 of 32 passing for 268 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, and no turnovers. He got the highest grades of his career as a result, and it finally looks like all the pieces are in place for this Green Bay experiment to succeed. What's perhaps the most impressive thing about this entire Jordan Love experiment is that he's been able to reach this level without a known wide receiver superstar. He doesn't have a Sterling Sharp or Donald Driver like Favre did, nor does he have a Devontae Adams or Randall Cobb like Rodgers did. And if you look at his stats, Love is playing better football than Mahomes right now. But nobody wants to talk about that. And I mean, the guy doesn't even have a Travis Kelce on his team. I mean, in fact, Jordan Love literally has 0 veteran targets besides his running backs. Christian Watson is the most experienced receiver in the room. He's 24 years old and playing in his 2nd season. Technically, he's wide receiver 1, but he hasn't become the standout he was expected to be just yet. On any given day, it could be Watson, Dubs, Jaden Reed, Luke Musgrave, or any other guy who could have a standout day. Love doesn't have a sure-handed guy he can just throw blindly to. He's having to earn each yard and carefully and methodically drive down the field. This season alone, Love has thrown touchdown passes to 7 different targets through 12 weeks of football. What if one of these guys does develop into a 10 touchdown plus superstar? What if the Packers go and pay somebody to to do that in free agency. The upside that's now apparent to this team is astounding. As the playoffs approach, the Green Bay Packers now look like one of the youngest and most exciting teams in the NFL. Jordan Love can take this team on a playoff run right now with the talent he has alone, and I'm only expecting to see him get better as they get closer to the playoffs. Green Bay made a bizarre move when they drafted their future quarterback in 2020. They were ridiculed, taunted, and quizzed endlessly on the decision. All they could do was prove it was the right choice. After a few chaotic years, a couple of MVPs, and a major trade, it now appears that they got it right.